In today's show, it's Center Tiers. Matt Smith is here with us, as is Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Last tier show this is. We're looking at centers. We've done the other positions: point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward. 2 of those last week, 2 of those in the last 24 hours. So you can check those ones out on the feed or over on the channel. And now we're going to talk centers. And of course, to do that, I'm joined once again by the croaky-voiced Matt Smith.
Smitty.
Matt, welcome.
Thanks, Josh. I'm hanging in there. I know like Michael Jordan had his flu game, and now I've got my flu pod. So
I'm sure it's going to be exalted in the same way that Jordan's flu game was. I've got no doubt about that. Now we're going to talk centers, one of the more annoying positions to deal with in fantasy basketball. Just a quick reminder, please don't, if you've got a choice, don't play a 2-center league on Yahoo. The centers are so weird, and there's just not enough good ones that having to fill 2 of them when you don't have to fill 2 of any other position is nonsensical. So don't do it, please. Let's talk centers. I guess the good thing with centers is, Matt, is that if you got pick one, you know you're going to get one.
And he's the best one in the game. He's the best player in the game, Nikola Jokic. There's no need to overthink it. Lock him in. The triple doubles, crazy efficiency. Number 1 player in the game for the last couple of seasons, and will be again this season. But I do want to ask you one question, Josh. If you had to make a case for any other player to finish at number 1 by the end of the season, who would it be and why?
I was just going to ask you the exact same question, so that annoys me that you asked me that. Who would it be who can take that off him?
While you're thinking, because I've thought about this, my answer is actually going to be James Harden. I think we've obviously seen him done it before, but if he can get back to 25 points per game, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, obviously over a steal, the field goal percentage comes back up, he gets to 2.5 to 3 threes. I just think James Harden, if we're trying to make a case for anyone, he would be the one player that I would lean towards.
It was going to be him or Luka to me, because if Luka just became like an 80% free throw shooter and had a season out of the blue where he averaged 1.4 steals, then he's there, right?
Like it.
Harden, if he averages 20, I was going to say 26 points or 27 points. If he averages that, like 27, 8, and 10, and he in the past has been a really good steals and blocks guy as well. Really easily. But you're not taking anyone else at number 1 in a points league. I think Giannis can finish number 1 really easily, like without any question. I think I actually have Giannis projected half a point higher than Jokic per game, because we forget that Jokic did play last season without Murray and without Porter. And yes, the year before that, Jokic was still number 1, but there's no guarantee that he continues at that same level. Every year there might be a marginal drop-off. Any weird things can happen at any point. You don't take anyone else at number 1. Just get that clear. You don't do it. But there's no guarantee that he finishes at number 1. I think that's what we're trying to get across there. Number 2's pretty easy as well. Tier 2, Joel Embiid. What does Embiid need to do, Matt, to get you not worried about injuries?
Play 74 games in a season.
Right, he's never played 70. I think he was 68 with a couple of bullshit rests last season, which was pretty close. And he had COVID in that as well. So last season, 68 games, I think it was for Embiid last season. For all intents and purposes, with the way that last season went, 68 games is like a 74-game season, really, given the way that, there was just random absences for players all throughout the year. But, I think, does he need? So he needs to do it probably 2 years in a row, you reckon?
I mean, I want to see one, awesome season. I want to see Joel Embiid play, 74, 75 games, this season, still be a top 3 player, and then that will give me the extra confidence I need. Like right now, I still have him at pick 5 just because on a per game value, like he's still going to be a top 3 player. But having Joel Embiid on my roster is going to give me some headaches and some sleepless nights and really not be good for my health, Josh. But one season of 74 games and I'll be set.
Speaking of not good for your health, tier 3. what do we do with this guy? Like, honestly, he has put together, you talk about Joel Embiid, he has put together multiple, I think, 75-game seasons in a row. He has done it about 2 or 3 years ago. Not only is Davis getting hurt a lot now, but he can't shoot anymore. Can't shoot free throws. He hit 18% of his threes last season. So despite the injuries were a real problem, but his per-game ranking also wasn't good. Like, it wasn't like he was 3rd per game and he just missed 50 games. Like, he was 20th per game and missed 50 games or whatever the actual number was. He was 15th per game and shot 18% from 3 and 70%. Like, he's turning into a legitimate punt free throw guy, which is baffling when he was the number 1 guy in fantasy for a couple of years.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, people love dynasty content, and Anthony Davis is the poster boy for why dynasty content is so difficult. Because not only do we have all the different variation in leagues, like you said, 3, 4, 5 years ago, Anthony Davis was clearly the number 1 player in fantasy. It's like sitting here now and saying, in what are we now, 2025, Nikola Jokic will be drafted at 16.
Yeah,
like that's the level of drop off that Anthony Davis has had. And yes, he's moved teams, but it's just been the injuries and like you said, the performance. He can't make free throws now. He doesn't like rebounding, and
that dropped way off as well.
It's just a complete mind-boggling situation. So I don't have any level of confidence drafting him in the second round, unfortunately.
In the past, when you asked me that question, who do you think, if things go right, could have been the number 1 player? Like, we would have just said Anthony Davis, right? Like, Davis was hurt, but if we take a flyer on him at pick 10, he's got number 1 upside. I don't think that's true anymore. I don't think that even if he played 70 games and played 34 minutes and up, I don't think he could get to number 1, weirdly enough, with the drop in rebounds, the drop in 3-point shooting, the weird drop in free throws. I don't know that he's got that. He's going to turn 30 in a few months. I don't know if he's got that in his game. And that's annoying.
And that's the problem again, like his age, and he's got, Luka and LaMelo Ball and, Halliburton and Cade Cunningham's coming through, and all these young guys who are going to take the top 5 and 6 spots in fantasy over the next couple of years. So I can't see the bounce back either.
It's unfortunate, but this stuff happens. We're going to get to tier 4 in just a second. Before I do that, BetOnline is your number 1 source for all of your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. The Panthers, despite almost beating the Browns, are 1-point underdogs against the New York Football Giants on the weekend. Do you care about that? Well, if you do, you can find all the odds for that and all of week 2 of the NFL over at BetOnline, including college football. Should have given you a college football odds, but it's all right. We gave you NFL. You can go check all the league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this week's Week 2 action. This year's Week 2 action, in fact. BetOnline is also your continued source for all sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And it's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Now, we had a bit of a chat about this, Matt, before the show about Tier 4, and said, we probably would, after you published the tiers on Basketball Monster a few weeks ago, you'd probably be moving this guy down. But this also ties into a discussion we had in the power forward tier, the value of blocks. We do have a Tier 4 here, Kristaps Porzingis, because this is a top 15 player. All right, okay. What's the odds of Porzingis finishing ahead of Anthony Davis this year per game?
I actually think they're pretty good.
Yeah, I did too. I think he's a real mass. Like, he was unbelievable in those games that he played for Washington. Now that was without Beal. We still need to see how that goes. But we have genuine concerns. But you talk about the scarcity of blocks. After him, there's a couple of guys that it gets like you got to start rolling the dice. And the reason we'd push him down a little bit now is just because you don't have to get him anywhere near this area. Like you can get him in the 50s in most spots, and I think that's really, really strong value. But the value of blocks is they're so scarce, Matt.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, I wrote the articles and put these tiers out a few weeks ago now, and they are due for updating. And now in hindsight, we'll bump Porzingis down. But I mean, and we spoke about Evan Mobley and blocks in the power forward tiers, and just to maybe swing back around on that again, like when we are looking at blocks and just sorting the projections on basketball and wants to buy blocks per game, we've got Miles Turner and Robert Williams up the top, who we're pretty comfortable with. Like I said, Turner, I'd like him to play a few more games, and Robert Williams has had some injury concerns as well over the last couple of seasons, and a few more rebounds from Miles Turner would be nice. We also don't know if he's going to stay at Indiana. Rudy Gobert is next on the list, and maybe as we speak through this, maybe we are undervaluing Rudy Gobert a little bit because we both expect him to do pretty much exactly the same as what he did in Utah. But it feels like you're getting a bit of a discount this year. Then you've got Jaren Jackson Jr., who we have no idea when he's going to play. Got Isaiah Jackson, who is in a backup role. If Miles Turner gets moved and no one comes back, then Isaiah Jackson's going to blow up. Anthony Davis, we've just spoken about his struggles. Then you've got, Mitch Robinson, a Kessler Walker, a Nick Claxton, a JaVale McGee, a Brook Lopez, a Mo Bamba. Like, all of these guys are ideally a third, fourth string big men. Jakob Poeltl sitting in there, but free throw issues. Then again, Evan Mobley, 1.7 blocks. Yes, the free throws are an issue, but he's almost like a top 5, like, safe big man in terms of blocks.
Yeah, it's a weird category. There's a couple of ways you can approach it. You can either get these guys early, or you can be understanding that the guys there are some guys late who will block shots, and someone's going to jump on you, Matt, and tell you that it's not Kessler Walker, it's Walker Kessler. So I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that now, just because someone will jump on it for sure. So you can do it two ways. You can grab the guys now and get the players like Porzingis. If he plays 60 games, it's great value. Like, get Embiid, who blocks shots and's got good free throws and that sort of stuff. Or you can just get a bunch of guys who shoot unbelievably high free throws early and get assists, and then take a plunge on Clint Capela, or take Jakob Poeltl, or take Mitchell Robinson, knowing they're going to hurt your free throws, but you've built enough buffer up that it doesn't hurt you there. So that's a different way of going about it. I do agree with you a little bit here on Gobert that I think we might be these tiers might be undervaluing him a little bit, and we'd probably bump him into, ideally we push Porzingis down, even into the same range with the guys that are in tier 5. But it's all going to depend on how you want to strategize your draft. And when we look at tier 5, we've got Rob Williams. There's Sabonis there, who's not a guy that gets blocks. There's Siakam, who's also not a guy that gets blocks. And there's Bam Adebayo, who's also not a guy that gets blocks. So 3 center players here who just don't block shots. And if you want to prioritize blocks from your center, then you got Gobert and Turner, like, spoiler alert, they're in the next tier, because the uncertainty around Turner, minutes, injuries, and Gobert with that bad free throw. But again, if you don't care about the free throws, if you're dealing with a different way, like, the value of those guys probably jumps ahead of a lot of these players in tier 5. And it is a real mishmash that we got 4 in tier 5 here. We had Porzingis in 4. We got 3 in tier 6. They could all just be really in one big tier.
Yeah, I think they could, and maybe this is the reason why people are going early on Robert Williams, and we've seen him go in the late second and early
I've
third
gone early on
round
it before
of drafts, because people want that elite shot blocking without the big hit to free throw. But then the issue is, Josh, that Robert Williams is only averaging 10 points a game, and he's giving you a massive hit in points, and we know that you need points early. So, like, what do we do? Do we get points? Do we get blocks? Like,
it's tough.
It's really difficult.
What I did in that draft where I took Rob Williams, I think it was in the second round, is I had Giannis in round 1, so blocks already with good scoring. I think Rob Williams actually got at the start of the third. I picked second or third or whatever, so it was close to that. Then I took Sabonis, again, good scoring, and then I took in round 4 Zion, like, really good scoring. So that sort of buffered that Rob Williams poor scoring category, poor points category, and while also not worrying about any hit that he had in field goal or free throw percentage, while boosting my field goal percentage really, really high with that team, and enabling me to get some other players who maybe suffered a little bit in that area. But that's what so much of category league fantasy basketball is about. It's about not necessarily who the best player is, but how it fits with what you've done and with what's coming as well. Not about what's already gone or what's available. Like, if I take this guy here, can I get something 70% of that later on, or is it only 50% of that later on? And scarcity plays a really big part of that. Any of these guys? Oh, go ahead.
And then in that draft that you were talking about, then when you were getting into, because I did watch it back, then you were getting into like the 80 to 100 range, and you were just like chasing assists so hard, and like Michael Fultz got taken in front of you, and I don't know, I can't remember if it was Jalen Brunson or Trey Jones, or like these guys were coming off, and in the end you were just like, Spencer Dinwiddie, like he'll do. I just need some assists from somewhere.
Yeah, had to go
like I said,
30 spots high on him.
We're trying to get points, we're trying to get assists, we're trying to get blocks inside the first 3 rounds, maybe 4 rounds, and it's so difficult to find.
Yes, is why, Matt, maybe you're changing your mind on punting. It's very hard to spread your resources across all categories. You might need to just narrow the focus a little bit and to just really focus in what you can and can't get, because the multi-category contributors, there's not as many of them anymore.
Well, Josh, maybe that's an argument for another day, but I like your little tease there.
We'll see about that. Tier 6, Rudy Gobert. Again, free throws are an issue. Bump him to tier 4. We don't care. Like, these are all in the mix, but his lack of scoring can also be a problem. DeAndre Ayton, block a shot, mate. Get to the free throw line. Chuck a 3 up. Do something. He is. We talk about boring players and Tobias Harris and John Collins in the Power Forward show. This bloke, is there any, like, you're a Suns fan, like, can he do anything? Is there anything that we're going to see that changes or gets exciting or improves, or is it just the same 15 and 9 with 0.9 blocks? Like, what can he do and 1 assist or whatever? Like, it's boring.
DeAndre Ayton is so frustrating to watch as probably as a general basketball fan, but for me in particular as a Suns fan, being the number 1 draft pick, like, he's got all the attributes. He's big, he's strong, he's physical, he can jump and he can hit mid ranges and he can do everything. But then at times he looks so shy or timid, or I don't know whether it's a confidence thing, or I don't know, but I want so much more from DeAndre Ayton, and probably the Suns do too, and that's why they didn't give him, well, in the end they gave him the max contract, but they didn't want him to initially, and he was talked about being traded and whatever. But yeah, like, he went from 1.5 blocks in his rookie season or sophomore season, and now he's back to 1 a game, when if he got back to 1.5 and got to a steal and got to nearly a 3 per game, like, his value could just be so much more. He's just so frustrating.
This is going to be a terrible analogy, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. He reminds me of the way that he plays is the way that when I was younger that I used to play footy. I used to be pretty small, and I'd be a little bit scared to go in hard to a contest and sort of step back a little bit and try and wait it out. And then I grew and got bigger, but still didn't realize that I was bigger, and you still sit back. And then at one point you're going hard and some contact comes from the side and you don't notice it, and you end up on top because you're actually bigger than everyone now. And then it clicks and you go, like, if I actually go in hard, like, I'm bigger than everyone here and I'm the one who pushes them out of the way, I can force myself. But it's got to click, and I don't know how it clicks for him, because if he just pushes to the rim, who's stopping him? Like, the bloke's huge. Like, get in front of the rim. You're a big guy, you can jump, you got good instincts, but it's got to click, and I don't know why. Maybe it will. And if it does click, like, this guy could get to the line 7 times a game, hits him at a high rate, he could block 1.5 shots and be a top 20 player. But it's just not clicking. And until it does, I don't believe it.
And from a football analogy, and I've tweeted this out before, Josh, like, DeAndre Ayton to me is Josh Jenkins.
The big fella.
And you're gonna laugh at that, and people are like, who the hell is Josh Jenkins? But he's big and strong, and he can do everything, and he can kick 6 goals a game and take a pack mark, but then he'll go missing for a month and do nothing. Like,
yeah,
can't we move on? Otherwise, you're going to get me all worked up.
No more Josh Jenkins talk. Let's talk tiers 7. And this is, I was really tempted. Jarrett Allen's in this tier, Nick Vucevic and Alperen Şengün. Allen could easily go in round 3 just because, Matt, he's a good free throw shooter. He's high field goals and he blocks shots. And when you're looking for him, I almost took him at like 35 in a draft the other day. And that's high. But when I talk about tip shows and how to draft, once you get out of that first couple of rounds, what is too high? Unless you're taking a bloke 50 spots too high, that's too high. But if you go 20 spots too high because you need a certain category, who cares? And he might be that who cares guy. That if you take him over DeAndre Ayton, no worries. If you want to take him, if it doesn't make sense for you to take Bam Adebayo at pick 30 and you want to take Jarrett Allen, oh well, I don't think it matters that much. And it in some cases, it might be beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really nice pick. The field goal is great. The free throw is good. The rebounds and blocks are good. Like, it's what we want from DeAndre Ayton. And again, talking through it with you and looking at it further, like, yeah, if you took Jarrett Allen ahead of DeAndre Ayton, like, I'm not going to get angry.
No, exactly. So we've got these guys separated into tiers, but it's just really like, here's 10 guys that could all go within 15 picks if you so chose, or they could go 30 spots later depending on how things have shaken out. The one guy I'd look at there is Vooch, who's sort of like I don't know. He can shoot better than he did last season, but there's no real defensive upside in that. So it's like, I'm not sure that you want to push him higher. And then same with Alperen Şengün, who very easily could end this year as a tier 3 guy. Like, if he averaged 15 and 10, 1.4 steals, 1.6 blocks, shot 52 with 73 from the line, it's actually realistic. Like, it's not me saying something stupid. It probably doesn't get there with the usage hogs that are Porter and Green, but he's going to play quite a few minutes. Fouls could be a problem too. But if he had if he somehow got to 34 minutes the way Jarrett Allen did, like, he could be easily ahead of this group. Like, he's got everything in. Oh yeah, he could also average 4.5 assists as well. He's got everything that you want from a fantasy skill set. We just need it all to come together, and it is possible. But I'm not taking him in this area. I think that there is a risk of him getting overhyped because people know, that I like him and plenty of fantasy analysts like him. And we say his name a lot, and then people just keep pushing higher, and then he pushes higher. He's already jumped 70 spots in Yahoo rankings, and he'll probably jump again, and then he'll end up getting ranked at 35, and then all the value's gone. But he's exciting.
And to me, Şengün is the next Nikola Vucevic. Like, he can do the steal and block and 3 per game. He can get the 4 assists, the rebounding, and the points, and the efficiency is good. Like, to me, that's
a top 20 player. Really,
it is. It's a really good comparison. Beautiful fantasy game. He's got no competition for minutes. I'm not concerned about the foul trouble like some other big men. I don't think Şengün's in for a huge season. I wouldn't draft him inside the top 50, but as soon as you can get out of that, he's right in play, and he could definitely have a top 40 or top 50 season.
People will look at tier 8 and say, how can you have Şengün ahead of Poeltl and Valanciunas? But Poeltl, the free throws are a worry, so it doesn't fit everybody. I'm really worried about what happens with Valanciunas this season with Zion returning. He was really good last season, but I don't know how a Zion and Valanciunas front court works together for extended periods of time. Someone has to lose minutes, and it won't be Ingram or McCollum, and it probably won't be Herb Jones. They need to get shooting out there, so that means Trey Murphy probably has to play a little bit more, maybe Devontae Graham. I think Valanciunas doesn't play the 31 or 32 that he played, and it maybe is 28 or 27.
You've just stolen my thunder there, and I'm writing my Sleepers Bust and Breakout article at the moment, and I've actually got Jonas Valanciunas as a bust, and that might seem a little bit excessive and harsh, and potentially it is, but I feel exactly the same. Like, Zion coming back, it's a weird fit between the two of them, and if Zion pushes, as a center, or they put Larry Nance or Jackson Hayes out there and give them a bit more flexibility and a bit more mobility around the court. Like, they're not taking CJ off the court. They're not taking Brandon Ingram off the court. It's probably not going to be Herb Jones, as you said, because they need his defense. And then on the bench, do they need Trey Murphy shooting? Do they need Alvarado's defense, especially as a guard and an extra ball handler? Like, it just seems to me that Jonas Valanciunas is going to be the odd one out. The blocks have come down over the past couple of seasons. Like, he'll still be safe for rebounds and points, and the efficiency is always great. But once again, he's ticked over 30. I think the minutes could come back to 27, 28 instead of the 30 that it was last year. And all that, I think on Yahoo, he's ranked about 50, which is way too high. To me, if he's there in the 80 to 100 range, I'll have a look. But yeah, there's just a lot of issues there for Jonas Valanciunas.
I guess the benefit he brings is high field goals and high free throws, which you don't always get with centers. So again, it's horses for courses. What do I need? What do I need to protect? What do I need to build? What do I not care about? And that might push him ahead of other players like Jakob Poeltl, who's like a 30% free throw shooter. Although he's going to block a lot of shots and grab rebounds, and maybe he plays a couple of extra minutes in San Antonio, or maybe he gets traded and plays as a 20-minute backup somewhere else because they're blowing it up. That's a risk with him too. It's also a risk in Tier 9. Yusuf Nurkic just didn't block any shots last year. One of the most unbelievable lack of block seasons from a guy who in the past has been a good shot blocker. He looked really poor early on. He's still a really good player, and he still does have top 30 upside. I just don't think he's ever going to get back there. Unfortunately, especially with Grant and Lillard and Simons in that lineup, he is, I think, a guy they should have the ball in his hands more than it should be in Jeremy Grant's. But I'm not coaching him. And then there's Isaiah Jackson, which is the other side of things. Like, he could also be a top 30 player. Matt, if Miles Turner is gone, he's playing 32 minutes a night because he could block 3 shots a game, hit it 1.5 threes, and grab 8 rebounds with 15 points. And that is a top 20 player or top 30 player.
Yeah, so a little bit of everything here in this tier with those two guys, depending on what you want. And again, like, ideally, you're not going to want Yusuf Nurkic as just second center, or second big man. Like, you're probably going to want a good center and a good forward, and maybe Nurkic is your third, just to give yourself a little bit of insurance there as well. And then, yeah, a massive tier coming up next.
It is. A lot of blokes in this group. Tier 10, Mitchell Robinson, Wendell Carter Jr., Nick Claxton, Clint Capela, Brook Lopez, Ivica Zubac. I think there's some delineation here. I think Carter and Capela are the clear top guys in this group. I would probably have separated them out personally, but Claxton should play strong minutes. Yeah, I'm expecting high 20s. There are people who think that he'll play 20 minutes a night and they'll just run with Simmons and Durant at center. I don't think they'll do that, but it's possible. Carter, I think, gets hurt by the addition of Banchero, the return of Isaac. Like, there is Mo Bamba there, who is strictly a backup, I'm pretty sure. But that limits Carter's... he can't play 34 minutes. He might play 29 or play 30. Robinson, like, foul trouble, injuries. Isaiah Hartenstein's a better player than him. Mm-hmm. Don't tell anyone, though. Brook Lopez is old. Zubats, there's no other centers there, but they've got a million wings who play at center too. So the upside is relatively limited. Who would you say then is the highest upside out of that group?
So the highest upside is Nicholas Claxton.
I agree.
We've got the 23 years of age, coming into his 4th season, the stable role, hopefully, strong minutes, hopefully, equals potential breakout season, hopefully. So around the 100 mark of leagues, perfect time to pounce. Mitchell Robinson, like you said the other, when you were in your roto mock and you were just chasing blocks and a bump to your field goal, and then you're like, shit, I've got to take Mitchell Robinson, and it just, even when you took him, like, you didn't feel good about it.
No.
Wendell Carter Jr., yes, takes a hit in value with Banchero there now. Clint Capela, like, is it only a matter of time before the Hawks roll out on Onyeka Okongwu, or Clint Capela's one, semi-serious injury away from having his starting role taken off him, and Brook Lopez hardly plays anymore. And Zubac, like, yes, he's got a good fantasy game and a strong per minute player, but last season he only played 13 games where he played 30 minutes or more. And like you said, they're so deep, and they'll probably roll out Marcus Morris and Robert Covington at center in small ball lineups. So it's really, really messy.
I think the thing that annoys me with some of these guys, in particular like Wendell Carter Jr., I think he's really good. I've really liked him as a player. Jim Boylan ruined him for a couple of seasons in Chicago. I think he's really good. And it annoys me that the Magic brought back Mo Bamba, because then Mosley is going to play Bamba, and he shouldn't. Like, he should play Wendell Carter 35 minutes a night and play Bamba 13. But I get the feeling that it might go 28-20 when Carter is a significantly superior big man. Wendell Carter could end up being subprime Al Horford from a fantasy perspective. That's the game that he's got. I just think that the re-signing of Bamba, as much as I know that Bumba's not as good, that means that puts a cap on what Carter can do. It also, do they play Banchero at center? Does Isaac play any minutes at center? So I really like Wendell Carter, but all those other factors are, maybe he's just that good, and I think he might be. Maybe he's just that good, and the coaches realize it, and the front office realize it. They go, well, we actually have to play this guy 35 minutes, or 33 minutes at least, and see what happens. But I'm not relying upon that. Bob Portis is at tier 11. Want to talk boring? Like, yes, someone can get hurt, Brook Lopez, and his value rises. But otherwise, it's very hard to look at a guy and say, I'm drafting him in case someone in front gets injured. Because, who knows? Lopez was hurt, or was healthy, was hurt, was healthy, and then got hurt last year. Who knows? Maybe he's healthy again. He's 34, 35. But Portis can't do anything, really, if Giannis and Lopez are starting.
No, he can't. Bobby Portis was really good last season in terms of his rebound and his scoring and
Great shooting.
threes as well.
Great shooter. Really turned himself into an unbelievable shooter.
But yeah, Brook Lopez makes it messy, but I don't think he's going to play much. So, I'm not drafting Bobby Portis in standard leagues, but just a guy to keep an eye on, I think.
And then we've got the dart throw guys, tier 12. And there are 3 guys here in particular that I like taking a crack at. There's Walker Kessler, there's Steven Adams, there's Onyeka Okongwu, Isaiah Stewart, and JaVale McGee. Walker Kessler, I don't know. I don't know whether they're going to start Vanderbilt at center or Kessler at center. If Kessler starts and plays 27 minutes, the top 100, he'll piss it in. Because he will block a million shots, he'll have a high field goal, he'll have good rebounds. He can actually ping threes as well, so there's value there. Isaiah Stewart, if he's launching 6 threes a game, 15 points, 2 threes, stealing a block, I don't think he's particularly good, and I think that team makes still no sense, but there's upside in him with the last pick. And McGee, we know what JaVale McGee can do, Matt. If he plays 22 minutes, he's blocking, rebounds, field goal percentage, and even scoring. He can be quite efficient offensively. There's some fantasy value there, but there's a lot of dart throws. Steven Adams, I just can't. I couldn't be less. I love the bloke. I couldn't be less excited about him from a fantasy perspective. And then I want to hear your takes on Okongwu, because I like Okongwu. I would have had him 3rd in that draft, but he's been stuck behind Capela. I think he's got top 50 upside. I don't think he gets that chance to show it this year.
Again, and I like him, and you're messing up my article because he's going to be one of my sleepers for the season. The 6th overall pick from a few years ago just hasn't had a chance to show what he can do due to injuries and playing behind Capela. And like I said, it's only going to take one sort of semi-serious injury or Capela gets traded, then Okongwu comes in and starts, and his value will go through the roof. So anyone in a keeper or a dynasty league, maybe just inquire about Okongwu. Like I said, with Walker Kessler, those blocks are going to be insane. It's just a matter of the playing time. And you said if Isaiah Stewart is jacking up, 6 threes a game, what's that going to do to his field goal percentage?
That's the problem. Well, it depends. If he hits him at 38%, he might be at least a 50% guy. You're right. That is an inverse relationship. We saw that happen with someone like a LaMarcus Aldridge a few years ago when he started banging in a lot of threes, that his field goal percentage impact went down, and it ends up sort of neutralizing the overall fantasy impact. It's probably why field goal percentage is a little bit of an outdated measurement of players' value, but it's going to stay in fantasy basketball forever, unfortunately, but it probably shouldn't, because those things, the value of those threes and that spacing is way more important than the 50 to 47% drop in from 50 to 47% in terms of field goal percentage. So it's a weird spot, Centre Matt. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of stuff we're unsure about. There's a lot of players with distinct strengths and tons of weaknesses, and there's just a bunch of replacement-y level sort of players with so many question marks around them. And that's what makes it a tough category or tough position to deal with. Thank you for coming on and chatting with all of these positional tiers that we've done. That's all 5 now out of the way. Tell people, you've already plugged it a couple of times, but what's coming on Basketball Monster and Twitter.
Yeah, so Basketball Monster, we'll have sleepers, busts, and breakouts out soon. I've already dropped a couple of those, but the full article will be out shortly. After that, not too sure. We'll do a couple of live chats later on this month and early in the next month. Might try and get a mock draft done with you, Josh, because I want to steal your players, and it's always funny when you crack the shits when the player in front of you gets stolen. So we might try and do that. But yeah, follow me on Twitter at SManSports. Come and say hello. I'll try to answer a question or two as well, and hopefully we'll do this again shortly.
Hopefully we do, Matt. Thank you for jumping on and chatting positional tiers with me. Thanks again, and I'll see you later.
Thanks, Josh. Anytime.
And that will do it for me today. Don't forget to follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. If you're here on YouTube, thumb it up. Leave your comments down below, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.